Down here on the San Antonio shoreline, this southeast shoreline that runs all the way down to Panther. Primarily, we've been fishing these guts that's coming out of these back lakes in here. Uh, we've had big negative tides here the last few days. If you've been able to be out on the water, you've witnessed that. And if you haven't been able to fish in some areas that you typically would normally get to, so you've had to kind of adjust. And if you haven't adjusted to that as far as where to get to fish those types of areas, then you've kind of put yourself in a little bit of problematic fishing areas because the fish have dumped off into some of these guts like this. And that's primarily what we're looking for when we have these big negative tides, when you can have deeper cuts or guts that are adjacent to some muddy, flat areas, grassy areas is really good, especially if you've got big moving tides, which we have had. Depending on which area that you're fishing up here, we've had decent water early, and then it dumps out on us as the day progresses. So that's just something that you have to be aware of. And then on top of that, you got the cold air and that water that's coming in on top of that. So it's just a couple of different things that you have to contend with if you're not prepared for. So, but that's where been our primary focus is we've been back in there and fishing these guts, lining them up. So if you've got an area where you've got multiple guts that you can do that with, that's a great thing that you'll be able to do. Up here on the shoreline, you've got 4 or 5 different areas that you can fish. It's got that deeper water that you can get to, and then you can get out as the day progresses. If you're fishing that long, you can get out there on the flats where it kind of warms up for you, and those fish will come out of that deeper water and get up on the flat to feed, or just to warm up in general, and you have some opportunities there. But again, like I said, we've worked these areas. We get back up in here, up in Panther Lake. It's deep enough area in there, so when that water really does drop out, you've got some opportunities to get back in here in some areas that you probably wouldn't be able to fish, maybe say spring or summer or fall, with deeper water that's in place there. So get out there, find you some deeper grass beds and over that mud, and just kind of work the area. Like I say, the main baits we've been using primarily, again, are down south on our knock and tail, using the 16th ounce jig heads, multiple different flavors in that, kind of based on what our water clarity is and what the color, or if it's stained or clean or whatever. We're in that new moon phase, going to be sliding away from that. So adjust accordingly for that, because we're fixing to be, next few days we'll be into those wild card days, heading toward another full moon time frame. But right now we've been able to take advantage of the new moon and these big moving tides and negative tides and a little bit of even tides. So these areas here, and then get all the way back down here and head down towards Cedar if you want to fish down in there. Of course, now Cedar's one of those, if it does, water really dumps out of there, it's almost impossible to fish because it's just so shallow that's back in those areas. So we get out here on the outer edges and work all that on the deeper drop on that. And you've got up here toward Twin, you've got some deeper edges out here, some deeper grass that's there. Of course, with the north and northwest wind, all this becomes pretty tough to fish. You'll get beat up on you pretty easily. So you always take that in consideration, what your wind is going to be, where it's coming from, where it's going to be heading into, if you got protection in there, if you don't have protection. So always take that into account, especially this time of year as we have these fronts that come blowing in on us that can be very difficult to contend with. A few days ago, we had these real big winds here on this past Friday that were just really humming around 35 to 45 that kept a lot of people, like a large majority of people, off the water unless you could safely navigate to get to an area to stay protected. That had been about the only way to really fish on a day like that. The Corkies have been good, whether it be the original or the Fat Boys, whatever you like in those. Again, I like the Soft Dine XL. Those have been good. Again, the 16th ounce jig head stone with all the different plastics, the mirror lures, all those different Little Johns, different flavors, same ones we've talked about in the past or mentioned in the past. All those are still in play. Just match what your water clarity is to those color selections. Just make sure, again, safety out on the water this time of year is a really big deal because you can get caught up in it. Temperatures out on the water, make sure that you dress appropriately for that, because being miserable and cold out on the water is just a terrible thing to do, because it just makes for a long, difficult day if you can last that long, or even if you want to contend with it. But anyway, always take those into considerations. Our majors and minors have been very good for us. That's been, again, the most productive for us this time of year. Especially with the scarcest bait that's available to it. So when you really see some bait working in a particular area, you go to town with it, be patient with it, really work those areas, because those fish will be in there. You just got to wait for that bite for you to kick in, and you'll have some pretty productive days in these types of conditions. Back in Spalding again, another one of the great areas, especially when you have negative tides. Any of these types of areas back here, again, the back lake mouths, it's been the kind of the same MO. This is kind of what you want. You've got moving water, especially when these tides are really dropping out on you, whether it be early morning or late afternoon, however that tide's moving, whether it's incoming or outgoing. These areas that's got the back lake mouths that dump out into these flats like this really give you great opportunities, because you got deeper guts those fish can get off into when the water's more chilly than what they really want to be in or be around, so they got to acclimate and help themselves out. So those guts are great places to work and be around. Spalding is one of the areas that does that. If you know other areas that are similar to it, work those areas. In this particular case here, man, we've got 3 or 4 or 5 back lake mouths that dump out into it, and then you got the big flat that's out here on the outside of this, that you've got all kinds of different structure that's there. You've got mud, you've got some scattered grass, you've got clump shell, all the recipes that you want and the ingredients that you want for that recipe to be good as far as finding some and locating some fish. You know, sprinkle in some birds working if you don't see bait working up in these particular areas. So, and the great thing about it, you know, from a northeast wind, it's all pretty well protected down in this little corner. So you get that, you know, protection from the wind. You got the structure in place. If you got bait that's working in there, then you've got those opportunities as well. So then it just becomes a waiting game. Then just kind of work the area slow, patiently, working your baits over in these particular areas like that, and you'll find and locate some fish in here. We've had some very solid days on these super negative tides like this, providing that you have the right kind of boat that you can get back to some of them, because some of these areas you may have to drop your boat a couple of 100 yards out to be able to walk or wade up into it to get yourself situated to wade it correctly based on what your windage is. Northeast wind, you can get up on this upper side here and work it across, where if you got a southeast breeze or east breeze, you can get down into the corner down there and work that back, or get back and wade back in some of the back lakes and fish the gut, maybe from the bank edge. That's always an option. It sounds kind of funny with what you're wading, but when that water really drops out on you, there's so much water that's pulled out that being able to wade to it, you'd be right up into the gut. So just get up on the bank edge and you can basically work it all the way across, all the way down it, and you'll find opportunities in some of these deeper cuts like that. Again, 16-ounce jig heads, working those down south, whether it's been the supermodel, original model, burner shad, any of these, they've all been good in different flavors. It's kind of trending more toward the darker side, darker flavors, because the water's been a little bit of steam. It's been churned up from the high winds and stuff that we've had for a couple of days. And of course, as it settles, that water clears up pretty quick. But, you know, you can start out with the darker bait and see how that works for you, and then kind of transition into something a little bit more translucent, if you will, and then see if that works as well. Come on back down here. You can get into the guts here in Sherman, work around Jaybird Point, all the way back down into Paul's Mott area or Long Reef Bend. That particular area there, you've got more opportunities up and down this shoreline from the Mott all the way down to Spalding that you can find and locate fish in some of these guts that are in there. So that's your tactics that you should begin with on the big negative tide days. If you've got, you know, even or normal somewhat tide, then it opens you up into more areas that you can fish that normally you would be able to fish, should I say, off the bar that's out there, and then of course back around that. But again, you know, your main structure that you want to be over is mud and grass and clump shell primarily this time of year. All that kind of stuff. It's going to be a little bit more easy for the fish to be in and around and work on and be over. And that's going to give you your best opportunities to find and catch fish. Port Bay, Italian Bend, Pete's Bend, this area down in here. Again, when you're this time of year, man, you got these northwest, west, north, northeast winds. These types of areas really set up well. Of course, you know, again, got negative tides and stuff, so you're not going to be able to fish right up against your shoreline like you typically would be, but the area presents itself to be able to fish deeper out into the bend area, which is typically would be too deep to wade, but with that big negative tides that are in place, then it comes into play for you, so it gives you more opportunity to fish a larger area. You got bait working in some of these areas, so if you locate and find that bait, and again, patience game. Just be super patient with it, and hopefully you can align it with a major or minor in and around that time frame when you get up in here. And again, you get protection from the winds that are back up in this area as well. Same thing over in Port Bay. You've got that deeper drop edge, so if you're going to fish morning hours or early morning hours, 6:30, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, whatever, somewhere in that time frame, you can get up on those edges and work around that deeper drop like you got up here on this edge right here coming off of the Swan Lake area all the way back down toward Port Bay. You've got that deeper edge that's out there, so it allows you to work those suspended baits or even your plastics off of that 5 to 6 to 7 foot of water, and you'll find and locate some fish hanging or suspended in those areas. So if you have your soft dine or soft dine XLs, which have been very good for us the past few days during this new moon phase, the originals and the supermodel in the down south with the 16th ounce jig head, and then of course the knock and tail in that 4-inch flavor there that we've been using in the Rogue, and of course the greenback has been very good for us. White ice has been good. Any of the brands, it didn't matter if it was down south, knock and tail, mirror lure, marker 54, the jerk shrimp, worked free lining that off of these deeper edges like that. So we've had opportunities with those as well. And of course, back around here, you can get back on the back side of this and you get a little protection from a northeast wind in here, this little lagoon, and of course up on this west shoreline here in the Port Bay area. All that's been pretty good on that edge that's out there, and of course you can fish a little bit deeper. Like I say, you can get further out from the shoreline than you typically could. So, but again, always pay attention to what your weather patterns are and what they're going to be. You've got the little sand ramp there. It's off 188 that you can get to these areas pretty safely. You don't have to navigate all the way back around from the Copano Bay Bridge, which is a long haul to get back into this area here. So that's a choice that you have to, whichever you want to launch from or be able to get to safely and navigate it. Just, again, the weather patterns are going to be funky on us here for a few weeks. So always take those into consideration in here. But again, you're finding trout in these areas. You're finding redfish scattered in these areas. An occasional flounder here or there, but that's primarily what we have located in this when we have fished and worked. Those trout primarily have been the main target for us. But again, on all the baits that we had just talked about, I really enjoy throwing the Mirrodine in the XL in that and in assorted flavors, and it's been very productive for us. And of course the Corkies. If you're a big Corky fan, that's a great suspended bait like you would throw back up there off of Port Bay or down there in Swan Lake, and just allow that bait to really work for you. And like I say, you have to slow everything down this time of year. Our water temps have been pretty much in the 50s for the most part, rebounding to the low 60s, but when you start to get into that kind of water temp, just slow it all down. Be patient with it. Again, work your majors and minors in and around those time frames, around these fishing areas like that. You'll locate your fish, and you'll end up having a pretty productive day.